Okay, so I finally got around to beating Alan Wake.
My name is Alan Wake. I'm a writer.
Now, what is this game and why did I want to play it? So, Alan Wake came out back in 2010, and for me, that was right in the middle of my World of Warcraft addiction. And I was in high school at the time, and I didn't have an Xbox 360. So, for me, it was kind of a three strikes and you're out kind of situation. I've been listening to a lot of Last Stand, and Colin went and did a discussion on Alan Wake, and it kind of triggered some things for me, and I wanted to give it a shot. So it's a psychological thriller, and the way they were talking about it, it made me think that it was kind of like a horror game. So they were bringing up Twin Peaks and different connections and how it's kind of like ethereal, and he's this writer. So I'm like, okay, maybe I do want to play it. So I knew that there was the sequel coming out, and that was supposed to be cool, and there's other games like Control that are connected to it somehow, and I heard Control was really good, and maybe I can add that into the playlist here as I just beat Alan Wake 1, then maybe Control, then eventually I can get to Alan Wake 2 because God knows it's not going to be relevant by the time I get there. But Alan Wake 1 was really good. So the whole game is kind of structured around these 6 episodes. The story starts with Alan Wake and his wife going on a little vacation. Alan has writer's block, and they're going off to try and get some fresh air, clear his mind, and she has her other motives for this trip, but you'll find out about that later in the game. So as you're playing through the game, you find out early on your wife goes missing, and you're trying to figure out what happened to her. Was she kidnapped? Did she die? Who is behind all of this? So you're going through and you keep encountering this darkness. It's like this weird ethereal thing that follows you around, and it takes the form of other people, and you can only hurt it when it's in the light. So they keep going back to that because your wife was afraid of the darkness and you were afraid of the darkness. So as you're playing through the game, the whole thing is you're trying to shine a light on things to uncover it, to make them vulnerable. So you have a flashlight, you have a gun and a shotgun and some flares. So the whole game is just kind of going around trying to figure out what happened to your wife, how do you save her, and you uncover the mystery behind everything. And by the end of the game, it's still kind of a mystery, but that's the whole point. I was talking with Garrett about this at work, and he kind of surprised me because he was talking about the game as if it was awful. It was like, he didn't like the combat. The story was kind of like, whatever. But that's the whole point. It's like,
it's not like your stories are any good. Not like they have any artistic merit. You're a lousy writer. Cheap thrills and pretentious shit. That's all you're good for. Just look at me. Look at your work.
Alan Wake is kind of like a Stephen King, where it's like, yeah, sure, there's an eternal clown that is attacking Derry and lives in the sewers. It's just whatever. That's the story that's being presented to you. So that's how we're gonna roll with it. So in this, it's like, yeah, okay, he's a writer. There's darkness. He's trying to uncover the mystery, what's going to happen, and they're drawing a lot from Twin Peaks, too, where if you've ever seen that show, that's very much like ethereal, and they're in these weird dream spaces, and there's things that don't really make sense, but that's Alan Wake. So, I don't know. I really liked it. I am curious to see how everything is connected, and I don't know if I'm going to play through everything and consume everything in the Remedy cinematic universe, but I am interested. I want to at least see what Alan Wake 2 is all about. So right now I'm playing God of War, and I think after Valhalla I'm going to go and do some Alan Wake 2. I think maybe that's how I'll approach this. The other thing too, it was only $30 over on the PlayStation Store, so that was kind of like a no-brainer considering that most new games now are like $70.
Non-refundable reservation deposit required. Fair and square.
Now, how does it hold up? So I played a lot of the game on console. I played a little bit on the Portal after Christmas, and that kind of helped me finish it up. But, I will say this. The combat was kind of annoying. I just couldn't really get into it. There were certain sections of the game where you're stuck in a monster closet where, this one really comes to mind where you're trying to get through this old rail car station, and there's all these trains around you, and you're trying to just get from one building to the other, and there were so many enemies in between, and I ended up just beelining it from one building to the other because there was no way you could fight all those enemies. And maybe that's the point. They didn't want you to fight everything, but I mean, the ammo was very scarce, so they made you think about these things. But there were some situations that I would get stuck in, which maybe I was using my stuff too liberally and just kind of using my flares when I didn't need to, or shooting when I didn't need to, and then I would end up in these situations where I had nothing and I could get nothing, and it was so hard to move on. Like, another room that I got stuck on was like 6 guys in a little room with one exploding gas can, so I would shoot that, try to get it to explode as many guys as I could, and then try to run up the ladder. But I don't know, some parts were pretty rough. Like, the story was cool and I really dug the vibe, but I don't know, the combat was pretty rough. And then not only that, but then you get to the DLC, and the DLC, it felt like old school DLC where it's like, yeah, we're gonna just crank the difficulty way up so that you have to play this way longer than you need to, because oh my god, that was so frustrating. I don't know, I guess you can adjust the difficulty, but when I was looking at it online, it said you couldn't. But maybe that's for the old 360 version. But oh my god, the signal was so hard. I struggled so much on that, and I eventually just started like running past things. I'm like, this is ridiculous. You know, dropping flares at the last moment, just trying to get distance between people. And then the writer was better. I got through that pretty much, you know, like in one shot, you know, a couple deaths here and there, but it was for something stupid. But the signal was so hard. So I don't know. I would say it holds up enough if you want to go back and replay it. It's not like some of the older games that you go to and you're like, God, this is absolutely brutal. Like, I'm talking about Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life, where you go and play it and it's like, God, I can't even turn the character correctly. You know, this is not that bad. But the combat is not super good, and you do kind of have to like get used to it. But after you get over the learning curve, it's not terrible, and you do start to learn when you should just completely try to abandon fighting certain enemies, because you will not get anywhere. In some of these areas, it is awful. But yeah, anyways, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think of Alan Wake down in the comments section below. Do you like it? Do you think it holds up? Is it still worth going back and playing? Until next time, I'll see you later. This video is brought to you by your support on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/GrouchyGus94 to help support the channel.